The Crypto Markets Update is presented by Grayscale, the world's largest digital currency asset manager.
Let's have a live look at Bitcoin. The CoinDesk Bitcoin price XBX index is trading downward at $56,788. Bitcoin down almost 3% over the past 24 hours. The CoinDesk Ether price ETX index is at $4,199. ETH is down about 2%. And taking a look at the new DFX CoinDesk DeFi index is at 563 points. DeFi, however, is by contrast and making advance about 0.6%. Joining us now to discuss the crypto markets is Katie Stockton, technical analyst at Fairlead Strategies, an independent research provider. Hi there, Katie. Always a pleasure having you on. So we're seeing Bitcoin declining amid broader markets retreat in the crypto markets. What's behind the dip?
Well, we have had a risk-off tape for cryptocurrencies, broadly speaking, for more than just a week, really over the last 2 to 3 weeks. And with that, we have a very significant pullback that we've seen in Bitcoin for one of about 20%. Now, that's, of course, not impossible. There's a lot of volatility inherent to this space. And believe it or not, that even with that kind of decline, Bitcoin still remains above key support, which we are looking at just shy of 53,000. That's based in part on the September high. We often see former resistance on a chart become support going forward. So that's important to note that we still have support intact. And importantly, the pullback has generated a short-term oversold reading. That is a measurable factor from a technical perspective. And as of today, we have a short-term exhaustive signal from something called the DeMark indicators, which have been helpful to us in identifying inflection points. The last time we had this similar signal was in June for Bitcoin. And it's not to say we're in store for that kind of reversal because it doesn't follow a big decline of that nature, but it does suggest that this pullback is likely to mature within days.
Katie, just one kind of larger question for a moment. So yesterday we got the news about Jerome Powell continuing on as Fed chair. We did see some reaction from the market, from the stock market. Did not seem to see a reaction from the crypto market, but I'm just curious if you have any take on that, on the market's reaction, and if you expect crypto markets to respond to this in any particular way going forward.
You know, it's really hard to say. I mean, I just look at price in the chart. So there was certainly a reaction yesterday from the equity market that was pronounced into the close. And yet we're seeing some pretty firm action this morning in the futures. So I don't think it will be a major impact. The market is very strong as far as the S&P 500 goes, and it'd be unusual not to see some kind of minor pullback with that kind of news. So I think it was just a normal reaction. I don't think it will be long-lived. And because the cryptocurrency space had already pulled back pretty dramatically, it was less affected and probably will remain that way. So I think it's probably not going to be a major impact going forward, and we should just respect the indicators and the momentum, which on a short-term basis is still to the downside, but with just a very minor uptick, meaning we get maybe 2 days of stabilization, we'll start to see those short-term gauges turn up. So we moved yesterday in our report covering Bitcoin and Ether to a bullish short-term bias after having been on the sidelines for a bit, because we're comfortable with that oversold reading as an impetus for the intermediate term uptrend to resume.
So, Katie, I kind of want to look at that chart you had of Bitcoin. We just showed it a second ago. You do see kind of, we're getting close to that support level, but then you have like an 89,000 long-term target if we were able to bounce off of it. I guess my question is, at what point do you change that though? At what point does price have to go down for us to say, you know what, maybe that 89 target is a little too out of reach?
The 89, or it's really closer to 90,000 target, would be derived from a confirmed breakout to new highs, which Bitcoin does not have that yet. Ether does. So I think that bodes well for Bitcoin ultimately doing the same, especially if we see this reaction that should occur to the short-term oversold reading. A non-reaction, meaning we see downside follow through to that oversold reading, would be a setback for short. It's hard to say what the exact level at which things change, but certainly below 53,000, you would see a couple of sort of support levels that we'd be uncomfortable seeing taken out. And that would potentially damage the intermediate term uptrend, which still has the support of intermediate term gauges, things like the weekly MACD indicator, which is a popular technical tool. So it's really more than just a level. It's these indicators that we want to keep on our side. And that MACD indicator, for one, remains on a buy signal supportive of that intermediate term uptrend. So if that changed, we would take issue with that, but it's not happening at this time.
And I think we're looking at now the Ether chart that you were talking about, and you say that this bodes bullish for ETH as well, and that actually would help Bitcoin, correct?
I think it just shows sort of a good example for Bitcoin in terms of confirming its breakout. So Ether did clear final resistance, posted the 2 consecutive weekly closes above that level, which is what we require for confirmation. And that then allows for a measured move projection of about 6,000. That's assuming the trajectory of the current trend will maintain itself. And support right around 4,000 remains very much intact for Ether as well. So you're getting these short-term oversold readings above support. And I think that that's an important takeaway. So really just one kind of sets a good example for the other. The altcoins have underperformed to some degree recently, and that's not uncharacteristic of a risk-off type of tape. When you see risk come back onto the space, you tend to see the altcoins outperform.
Yeah, we
Right.
also have those altcoins. We have that chart you did, an animated version, I guess. So you see them all moving in the long term or intermediate term to 12 weeks. If we look at a 12-week average and then also a 10-day average, you see them in both situations underperforming Bitcoin. Is that correct?
Yeah, they have underperformed over both of those time horizons. Now, that RRG or relative rotation graph that's pictured shows normalized relative strength for each of those altcoins relative to Bitcoin. So if you see a trailing history behind that's pointing down and to the left, well, that means it's underperformed with growing momentum. So what you want to see is something pointing up and to the right. And really, it has only been Polkadot, and that's getting a little bit long in the tooth in terms of its outperformance. But the graph actually upholds this clockwise rotation that would suggest that the altcoins within the coming weeks should start to outperform again, because a lot of them are just starting to tick up, meaning that they've lost some downside momentum in relative terms.